Welcome back, everybody. All right, so let's take a look at Blender here. Now, if you haven't taken the 1 hour Blender tutorial at mammothinteractive.com, I highly recommend that you do take that. It is a fairly good course, and it covers everything that I'm going to cover in here. And so, if you've never used Blender before, I highly recommend going to do that. I would highly recommend going to do that, okay? So here we go. We have our Blender object here, and the way that it works, at least the way Blender works, is that you have a primitive in the center, and in order to do whatever you're going to do in Blender, you modify this primitive. Now, if you hop over to the Create tab, you can see that there's a whole bunch of other primitives and objects you can use, like lights and curves and whatnot. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm actually going to delete this here, okay? And we're going to make a simple lamp in this tutorial, and the simple lamp is going to be a cylinder, okay? So this is going to be the base here. Now, if you push S and, actually we'll just zoom out just a bit, we're going to push S and then Z to scale on the Z axis, and we might have to do that a couple times, but this is going to be the base, and I'm just going to move that in there. Now, if you plan to export this to any other environment, you want to make sure that you know exactly what the dimensions are for this here. And the reason is that if you export to, let's say, Unity 3D or Unreal, you might get different results. So one of the biggest challenges with working with any kind of 3D objects is that when you go from one editor to another, there is a chance for things to not work. So you want to make sure that you know that art pipeline, and that's what it's called, a pipeline, very well. But we're going to talk about that in another tutorial. Right now, we're going to tab into edit mode here and make sure we're in face select. And we're going to select the top face here. We're going to push E to extrude, right click, and we're going to push scale in. And all this does is that this scales this circle in at the top. You do need to push E to extrude, okay? And we'll make it something more like that big, okay? And we'll simply do that here, and you can move it up just like that. Yeah, there we go. And we'll just move it up there. Now, here you can see that there's quite a lot of vertices here. You might not want to use an object that's this complex, and as a general rule, the more lines you see and the more dots you see, the more complex the shape is, and you generally don't want to have that if you're in a game environment, okay? So this is actually going to be a very simple lamp, okay? And we'll make it a tabletop lamp. Sounds pretty cool. So we have this here, and we're going to go and we're going to add in what we call UV sphere. Now, if you add in an object in edit mode, or if we tab out and go back to object mode, if we add in an object in object mode, they become two different objects, whereas if you add them in edit mode, they become part of the same object. Let me demonstrate. So let's tab out into object mode, and I'll add in a sphere, okay? Now these, and I'll just move it aside so they're not colliding here. So if I tab into edit mode, you notice I can't edit this object here, and if I select this object, you notice I can't edit this object. Alright, so I'm just going to push Control or Command Z, depending on what system you're in, and let's tab into edit mode here, and let's add in that UV sphere. Okay, and I'll just move it aside here. And you notice when I tab into edit mode, I can access both of these. Now that means these are part of the same object, and if I don't do that, they're part of different objects. Now, here's the thing. If you add it in different objects, what ends up happening is that you can add different materials. So let's say you want the base to be a silver or a chrome color, and you want the shade to be something different. Then it's better that you put them as two different objects. So I'm going to add in a UV sphere, and I'm going to simply move it down, and I'm just going to kind of move it towards the center. You can always push the number pad, and I believe 7 is the one we want. So we're just going to move that right there. Okay, and we can push 3, and we can move this up, something like that here. Now we could stop it right here and kind of have like a disco ball at the top of the. We can have a disco ball at the top of the sphere here. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to push 3. I'm going to tab into edit mode. I'm just going to select part of the bottom here. I'm going to push B to box select, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply delete these faces here, push B to box select again, and make sure you just select the bottom half here. Delete the faces, and you can always see that there's a little bit left, so just kind of somehow get rid of them. Also, I should point out that if they're two different objects, they're a little bit easier to work with. So box select, delete, and I think that should be it. Okay, tab in back to object mode. Now what you can do is you can go all the way until these two objects are intersecting, and I just like to put it just something like that here. Okay, and there we go, and there we have a simple lamp shade just like that here. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in the next tutorial. I'll see you guys then.